Welcome in to another episode of Double Overtime presented by VC Ultimate. I'm Jenna and he's Sascha Vogel. It's championship weekend time in the Western Ultimate League. The college championships are now officially wrapped with D1 finishing up this past weekend. Congratulations to both UNC teams for both three-peating Pleiades and Darkside, each in the D1 women's and D1 men's divisions respectively, and there's a bunch of Premier Ultimate League action coming up. Sascha, how are you doing?
Doing okay. It was a fun weekend to watch Frisbee. How was it for you? You were there. You were on the ground reporting. How was your weekend?
Every time I go to one of these big events as a reporter, if people don't know, for some reason, I've been covering College Ultimate all season as the D1 women's division editor. Was out in Mason, Ohio, covering the D1 champs this past weekend. I always forget just how tiring they are and how much walking and standing you end up doing, because it's not only that you are, certainly as a reporter in my role, walking back and forth between different fields, you're live tweeting, you're checking in on scores, mostly standing on the sideline most of the time. And then once the games are done at the end of the day, you get some food, you go back to the Airbnb, and then between Friday night and Saturday night, I got a combined 8 hours of sleep over 2 nights. So you can do the math yourself of how that works out. So it is very tiring. If it seems like I am tired or didn't happen to catch the 2 Premier Ultimate League games that happened this weekend, you would be correct, because it was a rather busy weekend out in Mason, Ohio. Lots of fun as always, hanging out with the Ultra World crew. I just want to say major props always to all of the folks who do all the incredible work that I think Ultra World does. I'm very biased, of course. I know that there were some issues with folks with the various subscription plans and the different ways that the different tiers of what you needed to be able to watch the content were. And like, I get that. And also, trust me, none of us are like rolling in the banknotes by any means. And we're really just trying to get as much content out for you as we can. Video and especially written in my case. Words. Tired. I wrote many words over the course of the weekend. If you want to check them out, go to the website, ultraworld.com. There, I think it's still on the main page, the D1 College Championships. You can click there. You can see all of the different video and written content that was produced over the course of the weekend. Still a few more things to come out. I need to finish up some probably mostly subscriber only bonus feature content. So if you're a subscriber, keep an eye out for those. I'm talking about the past and the future of what the D1 women's division was and is and will be going forward, given that UNC looks like such juggernauts, especially on the women's side. The Pleiades are so good. Back-to-back 15-8 games in the semifinals. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it looked like a really fun weekend. I mean, I don't envy you for your lack of sleep, but
we make it work. It's really like, it's weird because on Saturday, after getting not very much sleep on Friday night, I like got towards the end of the day and was expecting to crash. And then that didn't happen. And then same thing on Sunday, like got to the end of the day, was expecting to like totally crash. And then that didn't happen. It started to catch up to me yesterday. And then I like was napping on and off today. So I took another day off of work to just simply recover. I would not have been functional today after getting in after midnight into Oakland last night. But yeah, it's a great time. And I'm already honestly looking forward to the club championships in October. But that's 6 months away, as my girlfriend kind of looks at me like, are you really just going to go away to cover Frisbee for another week and leave me alone? And I was like, look, it's 6 months away. We got time.
That is true. It is club season now. So
Weird. It's already club season.
Weird. Yeah, I got my first practice this weekend with my team. So I'm excited for that. I've missed my guys.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Detroit Mechanix.
Oh my gosh. You know what I also didn't watch? The Mechanix losing again. I did hear plenty of heckles about it from the Ultra World crew, so don't you worry, folks. I'm
Oh,
keeping
God.
well informed that this is a responsibility that Sascha and I have every week now.
Yeah. So Mechanix hosted Minnesota and lost 25-17. What I thought, looking at the stats, was kind of impressive, to be honest, was that they were only behind 3 points at the end of the third quarter. That's pretty close for most Mechanix.
That's
and then,
pretty good.
Yeah, and then they let up an 8-3 run in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Oh.
So it wasn't great. But it happened. And next week they host Indy. Okay, here's the thing about this Mechanix team. I have to, we have to sit here and we have to kind of analyze the team a little bit. They were 1 for 19 on break chances. They had
that's really bad.
19 opportunities to break, and they only got one of them.
I think if I'm doing my math, that's just a little over 5% of the time they converted on their break chances.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Hey, but it's over 5%.
If you
That's
want
not good, Sascha. That's really bad, in fact.
If you want to win a game, you have to do better than that. I'm just... Okay, this has been our Mechanix Minute. On to...
Just one last note. As a D-line player, I like to say that I prefer to play D-line because D-line wins you games while O-line loses you games. If you have a D-line that is only getting one break chance back, that means your O-line can only give up one break. So in this case, maybe it was, in fact, the Mechanix D-line that lost them the game.
Possibly.
Well...
Yeah, this coming week,
moving on.
The Mechanix host the Indianapolis Alley Cats, and we'll see how that goes while we still search for the first win in years.
But one of their players got a win, right? Or something, or a former player. I swear I saw something online, like first win in 39 games. I was like, that has to be a former Detroit Mechanix player.
Yeah, it was. He was like their all-star for like the past couple of years too. Like he was their guy.
And now he's not playing for them?
He's not. Now he's playing for Chicago and got his very first AUDL win. I kind of... I said something on Twitter about it that I said, imagine not winning your first AUDL game. Couldn't be me because the first game I played in, I ended up winning. So that was nice.
Get the monkey off your back early, right?
Exactly. Anyways, okay. Going on to the Premier Ultimate League. Premier Ultimate League Week 9. We had 2 games this weekend. Milwaukee at Portland and Indy at Nashville. First game, Milwaukee at Portland. No, not Yes, Milwaukee. Sorry, Milwaukee at Portland. I was thinking Minnesota for some reason.
We'll talk about them in a moment.
Yes, we will. Final score, 8-17. Portland was leading 6-3 after 1, and then they did not allow another goal in the first half and ended up leading at the end of the half 10-3. And then after third quarter, it kind of, it was pretty back and forth, pretty unserved quarter, 14-6, and then ended up 17-8.
I mean, when you're up by 7 goals at halftime after having scored a bunch in a row without response, that makes sense to me. That you might let up a little bit in the second half. I'm not surprised by this result. Turns out when Portland doesn't play an East Division team, they're pretty good. Their problem is they've had to play 4 of their 6 games against East Division games because of that doubleheader, or home and away, or whatever the heck you want to call it, against Philly. So the other game of the weekend saw, I think as you might mention, Indy playing at Nashville, another Midwest team in action. Indy 16-9 winners. It was tied at 2 after the first. It was a 5-2 Indy lead at halftime. Again, not giving up any goals in the second quarter, and then 8-6 after 3 quarters. But then kind of remarkably, it was an 8-3 final quarter from Indy, which to me feels like sometimes, and I feel like we've talked about teams like getting late in games and then legs starting to go and then defenses opening up. And I feel like that's what happened. To go 8-6 lead after 3 quarters to an 8-3 lead or 8-3 final quarter margin feels to me like the defense might have let up a little bit on Nashville's end or something. Or it looked like it was kind of windy from the little bit of footage I saw. Could have been a lot windy and gotten less windy, so a little hard to say.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like these games really mattered. Truthfully,
Yeah.
like just straight up, these games did not matter for anything at all, apparently. Like we kind of discussed last week.
I will say especially for the Milwaukee-Portland game, I think you can make a tiny argument for the Indy-Nashville game. But yeah, okay, let's talk about this. I think we hinted at it last week because then this was the whole confusion. It's only intra within division games, as it turns out, that matter to who wins the divisions, which means for the sake of determining 3 out of your 4 championship weekend attendees, only 3 of your 6 games actually matter, which feels like there's a whole bunch of problems with that. 1, you're cutting down your sample size. 2, not only are you reducing your sample size overall, you're now having issues with like who plays at home, who plays away, who plays in really windy conditions, who doesn't. Like the smaller your sample size, the more you're going to get funkiness. And the other problem is you can end up with situations where in the Midwest Division, there is a non-zero chance that a 2-4 Milwaukee Monarchs team that could end up with a minus 53 point differential could make championship weekend over a potential 5-1 Minnesota Strike team with a plus 22 differential. This is the problem when you have such limited data sets, is you end up with nonsense like that. I kind of understand, a tiny bit of me understands, that last season the PUL didn't have all the divisional teams play all the teams in the division, and people were upset about that because of the unbalanced schedule and yada yada. So then the PUL was like, great, we're going to have all our division teams play, and then that's going to be a thing to decide it. But then, as a consequence, none of that other division games matter. I don't know what to make of it. And it makes my already very tired brain very tired thinking about that possibility.
I don't know why this is happening. It's hard for me to believe that there's a large group of people or a small group of people that all sat down and said, yes, everything about this is great, and this is what we're going to do.
I don't know. And it's just like, again, I could see a situation where they're like, look, let's be realistic. Looking at the Milwaukee Monarchs, my brain is just only mostly firing, folks. Their out of conference schedule has them playing all East Division teams, right? I think we looked at that at one point. I'd have to like triple check. Sascha's going to triple check for me. That's not fair to compare their schedule against a Minnesota Strike team who 2 of their out of conference games are against South Division teams, Atlanta and Nashville. I've gotten a thumbs up that indeed Milwaukee's out of division games were all East Division powerhouses, and including Portland. I'll include Portland. Again, when Portland doesn't play an East Division team, they tend to do pretty well. And Minnesota gets the easier road. Sorry, Atlanta and Nashville. I just still don't understand why, okay, maybe you toss out the like overall record. I feel like point diff is still kind of helpful, even if the schedules are super unbalanced. Or you just figure out a way to make the schedule more balanced. Like, just if you're going to rely on divisional, just have home and away. You get a 6-game schedule, everyone gets home and away in their division. The downside is you don't get cross-divisional play, but you save on travel costs. and then you get the top, 3 teams, and then you use an algorithm or something, or you use a committee. Use the committee. If none of the divisions play each other, use a committee to determine who is the best team via the eye test, right? Hand wavy, but you need a 4th team. At least then you aren't tossing out half of your sample size. The data person in me is like, why are you reducing your sample size even if the sample is flawed? Like, I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point, even if somehow, I'm sorry, Milwaukee, for ragging on you, but even if Milwaukee were to somehow beat Minnesota this upcoming weekend, I don't understand how looking at a 5-1 record versus a 2-4 record, a plus 22 differential versus a minus 53 differential, in theory for a 1-point game, would tell you that Milwaukee deserves to be in championship weekend. That scenario alone should tell you that your format has serious flaws to it. The other situations have flaws to them too. I don't know if this is the best way to do it, fundamentally, because you would still have people who would be upset about the records overall. But look, if you went overall record, which Sascha, you and I made the mistakes by the POL rules, we made the mistake of assuming it was overall record because that's the intuitive thing. And by overall record, the best teams have been the best teams for the most part. The East Division was going to always be a mess. This doesn't seem like the right approach, but here we are. 2 teams are decided, and the Midwest could have a 6-0 division winner go in. They could have a 2-4 division winner go in. And I don't understand how both of those things can be true in this particular setting.
And also, like, with these out-of-division games effectively not mattering, we all know the struggles of both of these leagues and how much money it costs to run these leagues, to run the team, it costs a lot of money. And having these out of division games not count is a complete waste of money at the end of the day, because you're having to pay for all the travel, for the hotels, for all of this. And it's just a complete waste of money that these teams could have had to help better the team, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. And it's interesting too. Okay, let's look back at the schedule. Sascha, remind me when the first POL games happened this season. Because I feel like it was April.
April.
Beginning of April, right?
Yes.
Okay, so week 1. Let's look at the schedule. Let's look at week 1, and people will see where I'm going with this in a moment. You have Portland Rising on the road to Austin Torch. Portland wins 14-13. We said at that time this could be a great win for Portland if they were to go on, and that adds to their potential record given that they have to play Philly twice. Good feather in the cap. If they can, win a couple of East Division games, then maybe they have a chance of making it in to championship weekend one way or another. That game happens at the very first weekend of April. We then get to, and I was looking at this and realizing, the 2023 POL playoff qualification news item from the news section on the POL website is published April 24th, 2023, which is 3 weeks after or so, unless that date isn't correct for one reason or another.
That is after week 4.
So you've had, I'm just going to go count the games because I'm curious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games played, of which how many are in division? 1, New York, Philly. 2, Austin, Raleigh. And then 3, Philly, Portland. You have 3 in-division games, and then the decision, I don't know if it was made beforehand or made then, to make in-division games the main thing. Why did Portland then, is my follow-up question, why did Portland fly as far away as they possibly could, basically, to Austin, Texas, to get a what would otherwise be a very meaningful win, potentially? Again, not knowing at the time how the rest of the season would play out, it turns out not meaningful anyway, because Portland loses all their games in division. potentially meaningful win. And 3 weeks later, it's basically like, no, that game effectively has no meaning unless Portland, like, you know, is in position to qualify out of the selection, which we, the wild card, which we didn't even know what the selection criteria was at that point. I don't think we didn't get that until like week 5. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me that the cost of flying people from Portland to Austin, of all places, right? From the far corners of your league for a game to have no meaning feels like 100% a waste of money in hindsight.
Absolutely. You know, now that we have all this information, Jenna, I don't think our preseason picks should count anymore either. So
you're still trying to wiggle out of that Austin Torch pick, huh?
Yeah, we did not have all the information, so why should it count?
I feel like in the WL, I was inclined to not agree with you, but in this case, I feel like I am more inclined to agree with you. And this is here's the thing, folks, right? This is not the teams are bad and should feel bad. It's not the players are bad and should feel bad. This is a league structure problem that effectively negates the hard work of those. I'm going to continue to harp on this example. The hard work of those Portland Rising players who went down to Texas and got a win. Again, not knowing how the rest of the season would play out. Only to, you know, learn, although again, some of us maybe didn't read things as closely as we should have at the time, but only to effectively learn 3 weeks later that game doesn't matter unless they're in wildcard contention. Again, pick your example. Minnesota Strike, huge game against New York Gridlock. Big implications for Gridlock to lose the game in the East Division. Big implications for Minnesota to be able to add to their record and clinch the Midwest Division by being undefeated still. It doesn't matter. Except for Gridlock potentially being a wildcard pick. I don't understand. You're taking meaning away from games. You're taking value out of the hard work of the players and the teams that make these games happen. And I don't understand why you're doing that for 3 of the 4 championship weekend spots. Championship weekend's not everything, but like, come on. It's sports. You talk about and you want to figure out who's going to win at the end of the day. If the PL is a sports league, that's what should be important, and you're just tossing games out. And as part of that decision-making process for some justification to make the divisional games matter. I don't understand it. And I know maybe this feels harsh, and I'm just like on my soapbox. But like, I don't know. At least at D1 Nationals, it mostly made sense. Even if some teams were salty about one team making the bracket and others not, because of how teams rotated their starters. Looking at you, Georgia women, specifically trying to fight on behalf of Virginia when Northeastern beat Colorado, even if Colorado wasn't playing at full strength. At least that made sense. At least it was clear. I don't like it. I just want it to be. I wanted to make sense intuitively, and this doesn't make intuitive sense. Sascha, I've been on my soapbox. I will step off for a moment.
Well, this has been a nice little Sascha sermon / Jenna's. What do we call it? Jenna's jaunt. Is that the word we came for? I can't remember.
Nice. Hey, PUL. You have our contact info. Let us know if we're being too harsh, or if there's more insight onto how the decision was made. Would love to know more thoughts. Oh my gosh, words. About how things were decided in the back room. It would be helpful to understand why a league decided to throw out not quite 50% of its games, because Philly and Portland. But nearly 50% of its games for 3 of the 4 championship weekend spots. Would be very interested to learn.
Agreed. Well, that's it for the PUL for this week. We'll get to picks of the upcoming games later on. So we're going to take a break. And when we get back, we will talk about WUL Championship Weekend preview.
Our friends at VC Ultimate are proud to sponsor Double Overtime. VC proudly puts community over profit, focusing their support on initiatives that help promote inclusivity. As the first ever sponsor to back professional women's and non-binary Ultimate, VC puts its money where its mouth is when it comes to equitable action. VC also approaches product innovation intentionally to make more players feel like the Ultimate space is their own. Did you know that all VC core products are now 100% gender-free? If your team is in the market for uniforms or custom team gear, check out VCUltimate.com. Not only are they working to change the landscape of sport, VC's performance gear is the best on the field. Thanks to our sponsors of Double Overtime, VC Ultimate. Welcome back to Double Overtime presented by VC Ultimate. We're going to be talking Western Ultimate League Championship Weekend in just a moment. Just want to reiterate on the POL standings Championship Weekend decider
Debacle.
stuff. What?
It's a debacle.
It's a bit of a debacle. This is not intended as an attack on any individuals who put time and effort into making this system happen. I know it's hard work, and I know it's not going to be perfect, and also I feel like we can hold that and say that the system is still not a great one, and hopefully it'll be better for next season. So with that, let's move on to the other championship weekend that has already been set up for us coming up this upcoming weekend. Western Ultimate League Championship Weekend held in Seattle. 2 semis, a first place game and a third place game. Those last 2 on Sunday. Sascha, your team and my team are both there, along with the, I would say, presumptive favorites, Seattle and San Diego as well. It's going to be a fun time. I hope so, at least. Nightcap, Seattle, San Francisco, under the Space Needle should be good.
Yeah, I'm obviously excited. I love Championship Weekend. You know, you get the best of the best going at it. And first game is Utah versus San Diego. Do you want to go ahead and just do our picks right now? Might as well.
Notably, before we get into that, the teams in these matchups have not played each other this season. As it happened,
that is true.
The schedule worked out that these teams did not play. Again, the slightly unbalanced schedule of the Western Ultimate League meant that 2 Northwest teams did not play 2 Southwest teams and vice versa. And so we get first time matchups of the season, which I think is actually, if you're the Western Ultimate League and you're like the board and such, you are very happy with that outcome. Rematches are fun and all, but if you have 2 teams that haven't faced each other yet getting a chance to go at it, I think that's high entertainment. Let's do our picks. A reminder of where these teams finished. San Diego Super Bloom, top of the Southwest Conference, at a 6-2 overall record, plus 38 point differential. Utah Wild coming in at 4-4, second in the Northwest Conference with a -3 overall point differential. Sascha, picks, right? Let's just do them. Who do you have?
I have San Diego winning this game.
Not picking your Utah Wild for the upset?
I am not. San Diego is just, they're too good.
I mean, they have 2 players, and we're recording this for context Wednesday, May 31st, so we don't have weekend rosters, I don't think, yet, not that I have seen. So yeah, we don't know, but yeah, I mean, Super Bloom had, 2 triple-double players in Dina and Kayla?
Correct.
I will also be picking San Diego to beat Utah.
So, real quick, talking about this, we both have San Diego winning. I don't think it'll be a blowout like we've seen San Diego do the rest of the season. I just think that, San Diego is just overall just a crazy good, better team. And that I think if Utah wants to keep it as close as possible and potentially win, the offensive line just has to stay consistent throughout the entire game. We've seen a lot of issues with this Wild team this season where their defense would get them into games, and then near the end of the game, their offense would let the other team back into the game and either get really close or force it to overtime and lose, or force it to overtime and double overtime and end up winning. Like, the offensive line needs to stay clean and needs to stay consistent the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what this Super Bloom team can do when they get on a roll. There's a reason why they have a plus 38 point differential. It's because they're very capable of going on those big break runs to just blow the doors off of teams. And to your point, if Utah wants to stay in this game and give themselves a chance, they cannot let San Diego get off to an early break run. Keep it close throughout. Give yourself a chance come the fourth quarter. You don't want to be down, say, like 10-5 or 10-6 at halftime or something, and needing to find an extra gear coming into the second half. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it all ends up going down for that game. The next game, the nightcap.
Hold on, Jenna. There is breaking news coming in right now. Speaking of Utah, right now, we talked earlier in this season about there being a women's sports complex in Utah. They voted on it today, and just now I am receiving word that will be happening. There will be a women's sports complex in Utah, in the Salt Lake area, and the Wild will be one of the teams that will be their home turf.
Wow, that's super exciting to hear.
So, yeah,
I was just,
super cool.
as we were talking, I was also trying to look it up and saw a tweet from the Salt Lake City mayor.
Ooh.
Congrats to Ballpark Next winners. And then lists off folks and team from Utah State University for your creative ideas. So I don't know what the next things are, but sounds good. If you're hearing good word, that sounds great to me.
Super exciting. Anyways, continuing onward.
After Utah, San Diego, we have the nightcap, Seattle taking on San Francisco. Seattle Tempest are your defending champions in the Western Ultimate League, having gone undefeated last year. Not undefeated this time around, although they did end up winning the Northwest Conference with a 6-2 record, a plus 22 point differential. They will play the second in the Southwest Conference. My hometown, San Francisco Falcons, 4-4 record, a plus 1 point differential. Nearly dead even for the Falcons. So really glad to see that my Falcons are there, and I don't think they are going to beat Seattle. Just straight up.
I have to agree. First of all, it's in Seattle. It's a Seattle home game.
It's true.
There are, from looking at stats, there are a few Seattle players that have only played in the Pacific Northwest. They've only played in Seattle or in Oregon. At
Oregon?
Yes. For the season. They didn't travel to anywhere else. And those players are some big heavy hitters like Sadie Jezierski. So who could, if she had been traveling throughout the whole season, probably would have gotten the assist record for the season. Very likely. But yeah, there's some big players that only really play this season up there, and so it's very hard for me not to choose Seattle when those players are going to be at home and they can just drive from their house to the stadium for the game.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what kind of Seattle roster we see, but I would not be surprised if it was a real freaking good one. So
Yeah.
Speaking of stats, I realized we didn't have this on our document. Or do we want to move on to picks for the rest and then come back to other stat stuff?
We'll come back.
Awards and things.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So your third place game, actually both of our third place game, will be Utah versus San Francisco. And I kind of have a feeling what we're both going to pick here. So I'm just going to go out and say it that I'm going to pick Utah and you're going to pick San Francisco.
That's correct. I was going to have us count down and then wasn't sure if the latency would allow for that or if our editor would be very happy with us. But yes, we will each be picking our hometown teams. I think, Sascha, I have a proposal.
Okay.
I know these two teams played earlier this season.
They did.
If they end up playing at Championship Weekend, do you want to put some sort of a bet on?
Oh, no, I can't do any more bets. I already have to watch the Mechanix. I don't.
I was going to do a small monetary value bet or a small trophy of some kind that would get sent from the loser to the winner.
I can't do this anymore.
Then we don't have to. I just figured I would propose that.
The Mechanix broke me. they have broken me.
We just started, Sascha.
They've broken me, Jenna.
So that's a no on the bet. Bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights. All right. Bragging rights. Hey, and the two teams might not even play. Who knows?
That's true.
Maybe San Francisco will beat Seattle and then play San Diego in the final. Who could say? All right, and then our first place game, Seattle versus San Diego. I feel like we each have our answers if we go back to our preseason picks, unless we want to change our answers from our preseason picks. I had Seattle taking it down. Sascha, and you had San Diego.
I did.
So, are we going to stick to our picks or are we going to change them?
Honestly, I was going to say San Diego to begin with, so I'm sticking to mine.
I'll stick to mine then. Might as well.
Let's go.
I mean, we've picked the same down the line, so we might as well have some differentiation. We'll get to picks review in just a little bit. I still maintain the lead because we picked the same for the last week's games in the PWL. Okay, cool. Are we good on picks for now for Championship Weekend? Thanks.
Yes.
Before we get to picks for fantasy and such later.
Yes.
Great. Let's talk some stats real quick because I know that at one point we had talked about stats for the Southwest Conference teams once they had finished their seasons, but I don't think, unless I'm missing something, Sascha, that we've gotten a chance to talk about the stats for the Northwest Conference teams once those teams all wrapped up their seasons in week 10. So I'm going to go pull that up right now. So we have them available to talk about. I remember there was a conversation that we had, I forget if it was on or off air, last week with the Western Ultimate League stats folks around which teams are the most likely to huck the disc downfield and which teams are the least likely. And we had a 2-2 split in terms of the top two teams and the bottom two teams. Do you remember, Sascha, from last week, what the split was for Championship Weekend?
I want to say off the top of my head that San Diego was in the top and Seattle was in the top.
That's correct. The two favorites were both led the league in terms of hucking. The bottom two teams in terms of hucking were San Francisco and Utah, interestingly enough. All right, so I'm going to run down the teams real quick just to go over your goals and assist leaders for each team. Starting with the Colorado Alpenglow, tight race at the top of the goals leaderboard. Jay McLaughlin, your regular season goals leader for Colorado, followed closely by Kristen Reed and Abby Thorpe with 21 apiece. Then there's a drop off to 13. So those three, McLaughlin, Reed, and Thorpe leading the way in goals for Alpenglow. Assist leader, Sarah Pesh with 22, Abby Thorpe with 19. Yes, that is Thorpe with 2 podiums, and same with McLaughlin. 14 assists to go, along with a team leading 22 goals. Notably, Sarah Pesh, 8 games played, 22 assists. How many goals do you think Sarah Pesh has? Unless you are already looking at this, Sascha.
I'm looking at it.
Okay. Okay, would you care to inform our listeners?
It is 0 goals.
0 goals to 22 assists. That's quite the stat line.
Okay, what's also wild is looking at the throwing versus receiving yards. 2,500 throwing yards over 8 games. 162 receiving yards over 8 games.
I feel like there's probably some like negative balancing out of like receiving dump throws.
Oh, for sure.
Minus yards back, but that is an incredible disparity. And then blocks, leaders for the Alpenglow, Rory Veldman with 11, Shannon Brock and Abby Thorpe tied at 10 apiece. So shout out to Rory for leading Alpenglow in blocks first season with the team.
I think it wasn't like 5
I
of those
guess it's
in
everyone's
one
first
game.
season with the team, but
that's
you know what I mean.
True. I think like 5 of those were in one game against
I think that's right.
Utah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
That's pretty incredible. So those are your goals, assist, block leaders. Notably, if you listened to last week's show, if you didn't, you should go listen to last week's show. We talked with the Western Ultimate League stats folks, and there's so much info in here, and there's so many different stats that go beyond telling us about what players are key for their teams outside of goals, assists, and blocks. So really encourage folks to go check that out. But we're going to do the top line stats for each team just for the moment. All right, moving on to Oregon. I am going in alphabetical order, but happening to pick the 2 teams that are out. All right, goals leader, Tina Snyder, 19 goals, and followed by Raina Camera at 14, and Morgan Zejan with 12 goals to lead Onyx. Some smaller totals for Onyx, not quite as high-scoring games as Alpenglow, it seems. In terms of the assist category, Julie Sherwood, 22 assists. Greta Eisenberg with 20 assists, clear leaders ahead of Claudia Tajima with 13, who's also a clear leader above Morgan Zejan with 6 assists as well. Again, not quite as high of numbers for lower scoring games. And finally, blocks. Snyder again, blocks leader so goals and blocks leader for Tina Snyder. For Oregon, Aubrey Bishop with 8. And again, Raina Kamrat with 7 blocks. So some similar names popping up at the top of the leaderboards for Oregon and Colorado in the different categories. So those are some of your players to keep an eye out for. And I feel like at least one, if not a few of those names started to show up on the WL Awards nominees list, which we'll talk about in a moment. All right, a couple more teams. We're getting through it. Tempest, goals leader, Frances Gellert with 16, then Lexi Garrity with 12, Sam Rodenberg with 11. Assist leader, Sadie Jezierski, already mentioned, only 4 games played, 16 assists, an average of 4 assists per game, followed by Hannah Kwai and Alexa Kirkland with 12 and 11 respectively. And your blocks leaders, 3 players tied at 9 for Seattle, Caitlin Rowling, Frances Gellert, and Hannah Kwai. Again, similar names popping up for all of these different teams at the top of their leaderboards. And finally, Utah Wild. Sascha, do you want me to read it or do you want to take it away? Recognize your folks.
My folks. All right. Goal leader, tie between Corey Bigham and Kat Songer at 13. There's also 3 more with double digits. Sarah Stoller at 11, Shay Wallen at 10, and Paige Kircher with 10 goals. Going over to the assists, we have... surprise, surprise, Paige Kircher with 23 assists. After that, it drops down to 17 with Brooke Stanislawski, and then Kat Songer at 11 assists. For blocks, we had Molly Robbins at 19 blocks for the season. And
that's incredible.
Molly is also the block leader for the whole league, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I was going to say Paige Kircher, also the throwing yards leader for the entire league, and it is not close. Leader by around 400 yards over Sarah Pesch. Something that I think we talked about off air with the WL stats folks. Yardage numbers may not be exact, but you're not going to get 400 yards worth of corrections for Paige Kircher to not lead the league in throwing yards by a wide margin.
Yeah. Paige also leads in like yards total. That's throwing and receiving yards by almost 1,000.
That's incredible. And
like,
receiving yards, 2 Colorado players at the top. Jay McLaughlin, Abby Thorpe. So Northwest Conference getting it done in the stats department. Big offenses, especially from Utah and Colorado, and then blocks from Robbins. So
Shea Wallen also at 16 blocks on the season.
wow.
And then what's wild, Molly has 19 blocks for Utah. Shea has 16 blocks. And then the next under that is 6 blocks for Carly Atwell.
For Utah?
For Utah.
Wow.
So yeah, Molly and Shea doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the blocks stats.
Yeah. And wanted to we wanted to run through that for folks. I know it's not the most interesting thing to just get names and numbers right off at you, but just want to recognize the impressive statistical performances that we saw from all these players during the regular season, especially for the folks who will not be continuing their seasons this weekend from Colorado and Oregon. And also, again, one more bit of appreciation to the Western Ultimate League stats team for making these stats available, making them detailed and informative, and as far as we know, as far as they can tell, pretty accurate. So it'd be helpful, as I think was said last week, going forward. It's just going to be super helpful to have these stats for people to look back on, have an idea of what happened in seasons past. But for this season, they're going to help us with some stuff around Championship Weekend. Sascha, you want to talk us through awards and fantasy that's going to be coming up for the Western Ultimate League?
Yeah. So the Western Ultimate League is doing, you've probably already seen on Twitter a lot this week, all the awards that they will be awarding to different players for the league. And it's like MVP player, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, breakout player of the year, and coaching staff of the year.
It is coaching staff of the year. Notably, as people were pointing out, it seems like every coaching staff was nominated for coaching staff of the year, which feels like it feels a little bit reductive for the nomination process if you're just going to nominate everybody. But
I had the same exact thought.
everything else has like 5 nominees. So
yeah. And I think I don't remember who decided the nominees. I think like the stats people were helping with the nominees with like looking at statistically who should be them, and then breakout player of the year for when we got the form to fill. We voted.
We did.
Everybody, it was great. We got.
I hope I did. I might have voted slightly late, but I hope they still count my ballot.
Oops.
I was traveling to nationals. Look, give me a break.
Yeah, we got a media vote. And so the media vote, or I guess when I got it, it said like to just type out who we thought the breakout player of the year was, and I think like everybody that got it, they just took the top 5.
Wouldn't surprise me
for that. Yeah.
Makes
sense. Where the other ones were like, there was a list and we had to choose from the list of like our top 3 or something like that.
Yeah. All these will get announced. All the winners should be getting announced on Saturday between the games is what I think I have seen.
Yes.
So yeah, we just had like the Callahan, winners announced at halftime of the D1 finals games.
Congrats to Seattle Tempest player Abby Hecko for winning the Callahan.
And also Justin Burnett from Emory.
Heck yeah.
Repping the Southeast. So yeah. Anyway, awards should be happening between games on Saturday. So that'll be fun to see who ends up winning those. And then there's a fantasy contest going on. There wasn't regular season fantasy contest going on for the Western Ultimate League, but there is for Championship Weekend. Sascha, I think you have more of the details than I do, at least off the top of your head / on hand. Maybe not. There's fantasy happening.
I don't. There's fantasy happening. I think
that was unprompted. I had assumed since didn't you like nearly win last year?
I did. Like, I was up there. I did pretty well, but it was an entire season.
Yeah. I assume it's going to be some similar stuff around picking players who you think are going to do well over the course of each team is going to get 2 games. So over the 2 games for each team over the course of the weekend. So yeah, keep an eye out for all of that information if you want to follow along.
Yes, you can find it. The Western Ultimate League Twitter tweeted about it earlier today. And there's a link to their website, and then there is a link on their website to the form to fill out.
Great. So yeah, if you don't have Twitter anymore because of the mess that it has become, go to the Western Ultimate League website. They will have more info, and that will do it for the Western Ultimate League season. Somehow we'll be done. Well, probably have some recap stuff. We'll recap Championship Weekend, and then knowing how stuff went last season, we'll have other various things to talk about with the league. But then we'll be done, and we'll have a couple weeks of Premier Ultimate League action to go, and then that will be done. And then Sascha, we'll get to wrap on season 2 in just probably a few weeks' time, which is absurd to think about.
Yeah, it's gone a lot quicker than I don't know. It's felt really quick.
It has felt quick. I agree. All right. We've done our Western Ultimate League picks. Shall we do our POL picks?
Yes.
For the 6 games? Wow.
Yeah. You got to go over 10 games next week.
It's going to be a long show, folks, next week. Just so you're aware. All right. So, of the games that are happening, only 4 of them kind of matter, of which only 2 really matter because TBD how the committee will decide things. Sascha, where should we start? Should we start with the games that don't have an implication for Championship Weekend, or the ones that do?
That don't.
All right, Nashville at Atlanta. This is between 2 South Division teams that seem unlikely at best to make Championship Weekend via the committee setup deal. So Nashville, Atlanta. Nashville, I think, has looked pretty good even with their loss to Indy. Atlanta has been struggling, to put it kindly. They're currently 0-4, so I will pick Nashville to win.
I like it. I'll pick Nashville too.
All right. What's our next game, Sascha?
Next game is that this week? Austin. Yes, Austin at New York. Do the Austin games.
All right, let's do the Austin games.
So yeah, we got Austin at New York and Austin at Philly. So Austin on this doubleheader road trip for the weekend on different days. At least I hope so. I don't actually know.
I should double check that.
It's different days.
I assume it's also different days. Notably, could matter potentially because New York and Philly are sitting in this interesting situation where it's at this point almost guaranteed to be one of the 2 of them to make it the Championship Weekend. Philly has the win over New York, but New York has beaten DC, who has already qualified via the 4th tiebreaker to Championship Weekend as the East Division winners. And both get a chance to play Austin. So, great. A clear, head-to-head comparison of how these 2 teams look. Except I don't actually know if that's going to be the case, because it's going to be different depending on Austin playing at Philly second. Then, maybe they'll be more tired. So then that gives Philly an advantage. And Philly's already been New York. But what if New York wins big over Austin? It's a closer game against Philly. And it could be a mess. We don't have enough information on this playoff selection committee outside of the 2 power rankings they've given us, one of which was a little bit farcical, at least in terms of the way that it was published and the timing of it. I just don't know, what they're going to value more. So it's a little tough to say how much of an impact these Austin games will have, but they could/will maybe have an impact depending on how they go. If Austin wins one of them and doesn't win the other, for example. Sascha, any thoughts on these 2 games before we actually make the picks?
No, it's just frustrating that we're at the point like this, like we've mentioned earlier in the show.
Yeah,
where we don't know what's going to happen.
More clear. Also,
exactly.
it was going to come down to this anyway with the selection committee, but
True.
It just feels tough when I don't actually have a good sense of what they're rating more. I feel like I have from the week 8, I feel like I remember Philly being ahead of New York. So I feel like there's more pressure on New York to make the leap. But we've seen stranger things happen before from selection committees than New York jumping Philly, even if both teams win this weekend. So I will be picking the East Division teams to win both of them.
I was as well.
All right, that was a long way around to have the exact same chalk picks. Raleigh at DC, matchup between 2 division winners that may end up facing off at championship weekend, depending on how the seeding goes. Sascha, what is your pick?
I want to pick Raleigh.
Okay, I'm
they got
DC.
a lot. They got a lot of players that just won a college championship for the 3rd time in a row, and they're in a hot streak.
I hear that, and I also wonder how many current UNC Pleiades players are going to play, because like me, they might be very tired from a very long weekend.
Nope.
So we'll see if Raleigh's at full strength or not.
Have you seen them? They don't get tired.
I have seen them. They tend not to get very tired, but hey, if I were a 3-time defending national champion, I feel like I might, feel entitled to a little bit of a break, especially if I know my team has already qualified to championship weekend. You don't need to push it. You're already in. Doesn't matter. Might as well rest those legs. All right, now let's get to the Midwest. And again, the theoretical possibility that Milwaukee could beat Minnesota and Columbus could beat Indy, which would result in a 2-4 Milwaukee Monarchs team making championship weekend over a 5-1 Minnesota Strike team. Sascha, let's start there. Do you think that scenario can happen?
Do I think it can happen? Yes.
Do you think it will happen?
Is it probable? No. It's possible, but I don't think it's probable.
Okay.
So yeah, I am picking Minnesota.
I am also picking Minnesota.
There we go.
Look, if Minnesota can beat New York in a game that didn't end up mattering at the end of the day in terms of the overall standings in the division, then I think that Minnesota can beat a Milwaukee team that just lost by 9 to a Portland team that lost to New York. By the transitive property, I think Minnesota are huge favorites. Yeah, huge favorites, significant favorites. But hey, if Milwaukee gets the win, it could be chaos, because I would not like to see the state of Ultimate Twitter if Milwaukee ends up making it in this fashion.
Be absolutely wild. Okay, part of me wants Milwaukee to win this game, just for the pure chaos that will ensue.
Yeah, and if we'll get to this game next, right? If Columbus, who's currently winless, I think that's correct. I think they're currently winless, beats an Indy Red team that is now 3-2. Because if there could be a 3-way tie at 2-1. If Indy wins and Milwaukee wins, that Indy would win on the tiebreak, almost definitely. Not even almost definitely, they just would win on the tiebreak. Yeah. That would also be slight chaos in terms of an Indy Red team at 4-2 making it over a 5-1 Minnesota team, but it would be less chaotic. I'm picking Minnesota, and I am picking I'm picking Indy to win. Sorry for the random laughter. My cat just jumped at absolutely nothing, as cats sometimes do.
Columbus at Indy. It's at Indy. I'm picking Indy as well.
Yeah. Which means, hey, we might be setting up a winless team showdown in the final week of the season between Atlanta and Columbus.
Let's go.
I think that is what we'll be setting up here. At Poultry Days.
Whoever
the battle
loses
of the bottom.
whoever loses has to do the egg challenge at Poultry Days.
All right, that's a proposal. The double overtime proposal.
I will speak to my sources and see if we can make that happen.
It would be something if there were indeed 2 0-5 teams going into a final quote-unquote showcase game between 2 teams looking for their first win of the season as the showcase.
We need that in the AUDL.
That would be interesting.
We need Dallas and Detroit to play.
People have talked about they're not playing this season, but it would be interesting to see the battle of the bottom.
Call it the toilet bowl.
It used to be, we're also getting off topic because we're getting to the end. We're going to get to our highlight of the week in a second. Now that we've done all the picks. I feel like I remember an ESPN college, I want to say football column that used to be like the bottom 10. Instead of the top 10, it was the 10 worst teams in college football, which was always a great column to read because it was hilarious and teams would often get like silly names. Yeah.
I need it.
I forget. I'd have to go back and try and find. They had a name for any time like 2 teams in the bottom 10 played each other. I don't think it was the toilet bowl, but it was something similar. This is, again, not to rag on Atlanta and Columbus players, as talented Frisbee people. But if you go winless, you go winless, and this is how it goes. Sascha, you and I get to be sports pundits a little bit on this podcast, and so we get to say things that get people mad at us.
I played for the Tampa Bay Cannons. I know what it feels like.
That's fair. All right, let's wrap the show up, shall we? Highlight of the week.
Highlight of the week. Olivia Hampton for the Portland Rising. Sorry, I could not think of their name for a minute. For the Portland Rising, had a picture perfect layout D on an under in their win over Milwaukee. And that is our highlight of the week.
Highlight of the week. All right, we got 10 games coming up for you this upcoming weekend. 4 at the Western Ultimate League Championship Weekend, 6 in the Premier Ultimate League to basically decide TBD selection committee which teams will be at Championship Weekend for the Premier Ultimate League. And I think it's just 2.5 weeks, which is also kind of wild. Keep an eye out on all of the action. I will be actually making sure to follow all the games as much as I can this weekend now that I'm back from college nationals. Let us know your thoughts. Per usual, did you like my soapbox? Did you not? Let us know. Double OT pod on Twitter. Double overtime spelled out, 2 words at ultiworld.com is our email address. We've had some folks mix that up. Double OT pod Twitter, double overtime all spelled out on at ultiworld.com email. We'll be back next week. Big show. Lots of games to review, big implications, and we will have a champion of the Western Ultimate League for the 2023 season. For Sascha Vogel, I've been Jenna Weiner. We'll talk to you next time on Double Overtime presented by VC Ultimate. Bye.